All right, there we go. It's a brand new Stick to Hockey Live, episode 60. Myself, Jason Martinez. There he is, Anthony DeMarco from the Fourth Period, thefourthperiod.com, at DeMarco25 on Twitter. What's up, man?
Not too much. Like I said before we started recording here, dealing with some kind of April Fool's garbage ice storm. But aside from that, not too bad.
Yeah, it's beautiful down here today. It's going up to 79. So, yeah, our spring starts a lot earlier than yours.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It is a cool 28 degrees here today.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
There's a lot to get into. It looks like Emil Andrea is going to join us in about 10 minutes.
Wow.
Of course, he came over from the Swedish league and had a really good year over there. I mean, you look at his numbers this year, 51 games. He had 6 goals, 20 assists, 26 points. Mind you, this is a league that is a league of men.
Yeah.
And he played in the World Junior Championship, the 2022 one, 7 games played, 4 goals, 4 assists, 8 points this year in the World Juniors. And for the Phantoms, played 5 games, got a goal and 3 assists, 4 points in 5 games, 6 PIMs, -1. I mean, this kid looks like he's really close to being ready. I don't know how he's going to, fare. I hope the Phantoms make us go on a run so we can get a little more eyes on him, but he looks impressive.
Yeah, no, and he was, I think, the team MVP for Team Sweden at the World Juniors in the summertime. He was the team captain, and this is a guy that I think that has really blossomed post being drafted. He was drafted in 2021, I want to say,
20?
In 2020. Yeah, so and that's turning out to be a really.
Overall.
Yeah, so he's that draft is turning out to be a very good one for the Flyers if everything stays linear, right? With Desnoyers and Forster and now Andre coming over. And, this is a team that obviously is relatively deep at left shot defensemen, both on the roster and down with the Phantoms organizationally as a whole. But this is a guy who maybe has the most upside. And that's saying a lot given what we've seen from Cam York this season at the NHL level. But this is just another player that can maybe make some other guys expendable down the road, most notably Ivan Provorov and Travis Sanheim, especially if the Flyers are looking at this more from a long-term approach. But you can never have too many defensemen, right? Obviously, the Flyers have an abundance of the left shot kind, but obviously Cam York has really adapted well to playing either side this season, kind of like what we've seen out of Miro Heiskanen down in Dallas over the last 4 or 5 years. But Andre looks like a guy who maybe over the next 12 to 15 months could staple himself on the Flyers main roster.
Yeah, I mean, I texted, this is back on March 27th, I texted Lappy, and I said, you like this Emil Andrea kid? I texted him that at 2:43. He responded at 2:43. I mean, couldn't get his response back quick enough. He said, love him so far. And I said, Chemo, a solid comparable? He said, small sample size so far, but he plays a similar game for sure. And let's talk about the job that Ian LaPerriere's done down there this year. I mean, look at every guy that's come up, Ant. Forster looks ready, totally ready. You look at, Cam York, who started the year down there, came back in much better shape. He still has some things that he needs to adapt to and maybe a little more aggression at the NHL level. And I don't mean hitting. I just mean in playmaking and decision-making. You look at Zamula, who started here, went back down there, came back, looked way calmer. And we're going to talk about him in a minute. I mean, Desnoyers, all these guys have really done a nice job progressing this year under Lappy down there. And he's playing the young kids. He's not winning these games with Cal O'Reilly and the older crew.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Cal O'Reilly is centering the fourth line, if I'm not mistaken, reading the depth chart from 2 days ago from Bob Rochuk, the play-by-play guy down there. And, Andre comes over, and I think he's listed on the first pair with Belpedio. And I think LaPerriere deserves a lot of credit. I think that he's caught
a lot of shit over the years.
Caught a lot of shit, and from me included, but I think that maybe that's been because he was a holdover from Craig Berube to Dave Haxtell to Alain Vigneault. Then he goes down and takes over for Scott. Was it Scott Gordon right before him that he took over for? Or was there someone in between?
No, it was Gordon. Yeah, because Gordon left and that when his contract was up, and that's when they moved Lappy down there.
Yeah, and obviously the early returns weren't too great, but if I'm not mistaken, he had mentioned that AV wanted him to run the exact same system down there so that the players were ready to come up and play that exact same role, as opposed to Tortorella, who said, just do whatever you want, carte blanche. And this season has certainly been much better in that regard. Obviously, a lot of the new blood injected into that lineup, I would imagine, has played a role. Like, you bring in guys like Artem Anisimov, a good veteran, Tyson Forster, Brink, and Lexell. You look at Ronnie Adder, full-time guy. Sam Urson obviously has played a big role down there. So a part of it has for sure been personnel related, but I don't think you can discount what LaPerriere has done because, as you mentioned, when these guys have come up to the main roster, not a lot of them have disappointed, right? Like obviously you've had some of the guys who maybe haven't translated as well. Maybe at Ollie
Like
Lexell.
Lixell.
Yeah,
He
Lexell
flashed,
is
but wasn't ready.
yeah, he's the one example of a guy, in my opinion, that when he came up, like it was just like, okay, I'm not seeing the same guy that I heard was playing down in Lehigh. But I mean, aside from him, all of them have looked pretty good.
Yeah, yeah, and Roddy entered up now. He played last night, and we'll get a look at him probably for a few games. But yeah, I mean, even Denway, a 5th-round pick, came up, and I thought he looked good, and he looks really close too. When I talked to Torts last weekend, he said, this offseason, don't expect us to go out and get involved in the top end free agent market. He said, because I don't want to block any of the young players. He wants them all to have a spot if they earn it to grab it. And he doesn't want a player that they signed, to a 3-year contract, some free agent, to be in the way of that player getting up. So in a lot of ways, next year will be a year of seeing some more of who's who and what's what with another crop of players entering this roster and entering their NHL career. And if guys like Ronnie Adder, Emil Andrea, I think he'll start with the Phantoms next year to adjust to the North American game a little bit more. But from what I hear, he is really close. And then, you look at Adam Inning is another guy, and Denway could be centering your 4th line next year because Patrick Brown's not here. So, things aren't nearly as bad as maybe a lot of people thought because of the development of these players. I had a question that when I did a Flyers Daily episode back in September, I found this when I was cleaning out my bag, my broadcast bag. And I wrote this email on 9/11/22, and it was the top 20 questions going into this season. And I had this question. I said, which of these 3 players will show significant development this season at the NHL level? The 3 players were Frost, York, and Tippett. I remember talking to Bill, and Bill said, if one of them makes a big jump, that's good. If 2 of them, that's fantastic. He said, I'm not even going to think about all 3 because it's highly unlikely. All 3 of those players have made big jumps.
Yeah, 100%. And you can make the case that those players will all be on the top line / top pairing going into next season. Like Morgan Frost specifically over the last month and a half, because obviously he kind of had an up and down season early on. But I think that he's come around in a massive way and a lot of adversity thrown his way as well. Like you look at, John Tortorella has really, played hardball with him, or maybe not hardball, but more just tough love, if you will. And
he's really in Toronto. That's hardball.
Scratched him in Toronto, played him on the 4th line at times. I've still heard that there's a bit of a maybe disconnect within the organization on how they view Frost between, let's say, the coach and management. I've heard Danny Briere is really a big fan of Morgan Frost, while John Tortorella still isn't as sold. But I think Morgan Frost has done enough here to at least warrant an opportunity to come back. Now, this isn't me saying that you should lock him into a 6 or 7 year contract. 100% no. But if you want to give him a 2-year contract, especially given the lack of overall center depth in the organization, especially going into next season, barring them getting the 1st or the 2nd overall pick, which would certainly change things, I don't see a reason why you'd want to move on from Morgan Frost. And then you look at Cam York, who you can make the case has been the team's best defenseman all season long. Owen Tippett, that obviously, aside from Travis Konecny, has probably consistently been their best forward. These are 3 guys that I think have really cemented themselves as at least midterm, more in the case of Morgan Frost, at least in the immediate future part of the solution. But in terms of Tippett and Cam York, I think these are 2 guys that are going to be here for the foreseeable future.
When you look at Frost over his last 11 games, 7 goals, 6 assists, 13 points, a +5, carrying 17 minutes and 19 seconds of ice time and being put in a lot of situations. And you can look at this 2 ways. You can go, well, these games don't mean anything. The pressure's off. So do it when it means something. And then you can also look at it, though, the players know the seasons they're not going to the playoffs, and he's still finding a way to push. That's one thing. And I talk about this quite a bit. I was talking about this on Flyers Daily. Like even the game last night, I mean, they were dog shit in that first period. They were kind of dog shit in the second. And then in the third, they battled back to get within a goal. Probably should have been tied because I can't believe that Cates goal was called off. But They just keep battling back. And while momentum in team sports does not carry season to season, if they win out, like the 5-game win streak's not going to translate into wins next year. But the way they play, the competitive, consistency with which they come out, and last night, the first 2 periods were not competitive, but the way they keep battling and their resilience is something that can carry forward. And I think for the first time in a while, the organizational DNA, they kind of know what it is, and they know what kind of players they want. They have to check boxes on their list of non-negotiables if they want to come here, whether it's a free agent, when you're drafting a kid and looking at all that stuff, because I think they have the organizational DNA to move forward. And I think a lot of it's going to stem from Danny, who was a fierce competitor. That's what it's going to be. It's going to be guys that come in, you need talent, sure, but there's going to be guys that come in and you better compete or else you're not going to be here.
Yeah, and I think Danny's going to lean a lot on John Tortorella, and I think that's evident given the fact that Torts hasn't been behind the bench in how many games now, and that's obviously something that has raised questions about Tortorella's role going forward. I mean, I haven't had a chance to talk to someone directly about it, but I exchanged a couple of texts last night, and I had mentioned just like, oh, you got a new AGM with you, and it was kind of laughed off. Just like, oh, were we shown again on, like, was it shown again on the broadcast? Like, what was going on here? And like, the person said that it's like, obviously it's not a direct tie into hockey ops, but like, maybe this is something that Danny Briere is looking at to maybe not be a full-time AGM, but more so wanting to kind of say, like, we're going to lean on a guy who's right there in the trenches and was brought in to really give us a real like pulse on what's going on down there. So I don't know what the relationship exactly is going to be between these two guys going forward, but like just from an optics perspective, it seems as though that Danny Briere is going to be leaning a lot on John Tortorella to see who they want to bring in.
Yeah, I think so too. And I asked this question to Bill the other day because this whole thing with having the assistants coach is perplexing to me in a lot of ways. It's bizarre. You don't see it at the NHL level where this happens multiple times. If a coach is sick or has a family, I understand it, but this is definitely different. And I asked Bill, I said, is he angling for a president job? Or because to me, he's too valuable as the head coach to even think about moving up there now. His work as the guy behind the bench is not even close to done.
Yeah, well, that's the entire thing, and that's why, like, I don't think this is a situation where you're going to see him become an AGM, but who knows what's really going on in the minds of the upper guys in the management. But like you said, like, I just don't think it's time for him to move off from the bench because his biggest asset this season, and arguably the biggest positive coming out of this season, has been the way he's coached some guys up. Travis Konecny specifically. You've looked at Owen Tippett's development, Frost development, York's development, all these guys, the turnaround in Rasmus Ristolainen. And I just don't think that even if he can give some good insight on player personnel and roster construction, I don't think that compensates for what you'd be losing behind the bench. And I've said for a while that I think that Bradshaw is maybe the in-house replacement. I think he's a guy that got a bit of consideration for the Columbus job before it was eventually given to Brad Larson. But I just don't think right away is the time. And like for a president role, for a head coach, a career head coach to jump right to a president, it would certainly be a massive leap. You'd be leapfrogging several like positions in between the coach and the president. But I mean, I guess it's a possibility. I didn't get it completely denied, but I mean, at the same time, I guess it's something that, in my mind at least, shouldn't be considered in the immediate future.
So I did some digging on it because it does perplex me. And I had texted asking about it. I said, I just can't figure out the motive or why it just feels bizarre. And what I was told was, Torts thinks it's his responsibility to help develop assistant coaches. They want to be head coaches. They don't want to be assistant all the time. And since the team's not on a playoff run, he feels like he can do that right now. And he says that he doesn't get anything out of watching upstairs. That's where all the answers are because the game's too slow. But he apparently is this has been really good for the relationship with he and Danny developing that relationship. So that is a good thing. And look, him being behind the bench to push for a win, if he gets more out of other guys, I think that's obviously not a big deal at this time. So he'll be behind the bench, but I just felt like it was a little bizarre. The other thing he said too this week was some of the veteran players, JVR, Hayes, and some other guys, their usage here of late and situational usage has been definitely tamped down because he's putting these young players all in that spot. And long gone are the days of Dave Hackstall and forcing Yuri Laterra on us and veteran guys that were never going to be a part of the future. And it was one of the misnomers about Torts that, because he's an older coach, the notion always is, like it was with AV too, but it was legit, was they don't play young guys. They don't develop guys. He plays all veterans. Torts is not that way. He is really doing everything he can to develop these young players, put them in every situation. Forster killing penalties out there, with the goaltender pulled against with a 1-goal lead, blocked a shot and got an empty net goal. And all these things are putting these guys in this spot to help develop them. That's task number one right now, after what it was task number one was fixing that locker room. And, that's one of the things where I think Torts has excelled the most this season.
Yeah. I think that there was that misconception that John Tortorella was a closer. Like, oh, you bring him into when you're ready to win a Stanley Cup because he was an older guy. And like you said, the comparison to Alain Vigneault. But he has been anything but. And I think that the biggest difference is that compared to, let's say, the Hackstall days with Laterra and Weiss, or AV with Thompson and Grant, is that those guys were trying to win hockey games.
Yeah.
This year hasn't really been about winning. It's about saying a culture and competing every game. But it's first and foremost has been developing your young guys and figuring out what you have moving forward. And that's what they've done. And, like you said, you have these guys killing penalties that you wouldn't have thought in the past. You have them defending leads out there in big game situations. And you have to figure out what all of these players are. And I think that John Tortorella, at least personally, and I've said this several times over the last few months, has completely changed my perception as to what he is as a coach. And that, you've even heard large pundits say, like I believe even Frank Saravalli has said, that, he was the worst possible coach that you could have brought in during the season because he's going to coach the team up and take you out of a lottery chance position. And that's true in some way. I do think that this team has won more games than they should have because of the exceptional coaching of John Tortorella. But at the same time, it's not a roster of pending UFAs who are approaching 30 or north of 30 that aren't going to be here moving on into another season. Like you look at it kind of like the Arizona Coyotes or the Montreal Canadiens as well, where both of those teams have a lot of players on their roster maybe that could be part of the solution moving forward, more so the Montreal Canadiens. So you're trying to set that culture as opposed to, let's say, the Chicago Blackhawks or the San Jose Sharks, that not many of the players on the roster are going to be a part of it when those teams are ready to contend. So you also have to kind of balance between, yes, you want the best draft pick possible, but you also don't want to do everything in your power to get that draft pick at the expense of some younger guys in your organization who could be part of the solution moving forward.
Yeah, that's well said. Let's get to a couple of things that you reported. Emil Andrae is going to join us in about 4 minutes. So looking forward to talking to the Flyers prospect, defenseman who has certainly peeled some eyes open. Let's start with Alan McCauley. I've had Alan on Flyers Daily a few times. I love talking to him. He is an incredibly intelligent hockey man and very well spoken. And it looks like he may be becoming the GM of the Lehigh Valley Phantoms, speaking of which.
Well, that's what I was told last week. I know it was something that they didn't want to get out. When I
go, Ant.
Yeah, exactly. So I had heard that he was a guy that, they've liked. And I don't think that it's even been discussed directly with him. And I don't think a final decision has been made at all, but that's the way it's looking. I think that eventually he will be named, or at least in some capacity promoted, but I think that he will be named GM of the Lehigh Valley Phantoms at some point. And that's a role that I don't think has been held officially since, I believe, was it John Paddock, who was the last official GM of the Phantoms back in the homeroom days. Like, it's kind of been a hybrid of Brent Flair and whoever the GM has been for several years now. And when Brent is traveling, it has fallen on Chuck Fletcher or now Danny Briere. So I really think that there's a need, right, to really establish everyone's roles in the organization. And Torts even alluded to that. I believe it was a week and a half ago, that everyone needs to stay in their lanes. And I think that maybe establishing one person to run the Phantoms is a good step in that direction. Like, obviously not a major thing, but I think that it's something that should be instilled. You know, I did an interview a couple weeks back with Chris Clark, who's the director of player personnel and the GM of the Cleveland Monsters. And what's kind of funny about that is that I believe Macaulay's current role is director of player personnel with the Flyers. So maybe he just takes on the GM role in addition to the GM role of the Phantoms, in addition to his current role. But yeah, nothing official yet, but it certainly is angling that way. And I think that it's something that they want to get done in due time.
When you have all of this change with a general manager, and there's a lot of shifting that's going to happen, I'm sure there's a lot of jockeying behind the scenes for two things: vote of confidence that they're going to be employed come July 1st when the league year ends on June 30th, and maybe an opportunity for some guys to jump up in their role and get a bigger piece of it. We mentioned Zamula earlier, and he came up in the beginning of the season, played decent at first, and then kind of looked like he got overwhelmed a little bit by the NHL game. Still wasn't there. So he went down to the Phantoms. And I talked to him when he came back that day at Flyers practice before he played the game when he was recalled. And he cited, the coaching staff down there letting him make mistakes, but not repeating the mistake in games, and trying to pick up his pace of play and be a little harder on pucks and passes with a little more juice. There was a tendency with him, Ant, to, make a pass, but not put enough on it,
Yeah.
And guys at that level, the AHL and NHL, they read that, and that's a problem. But he worked on that. Came back up, looked good, but apparently he's now dealing with a significant injury.
Yeah. Obviously, that was something that I put out on Saturday. Something that I guess in retrospect, I probably should have been more conscious of. Like, divulging injuries isn't really something that you want to get into. So that's something that, in my opinion, I made an error on, and I'll probably definitely think twice about it another time around. But what's done is done. And yeah, I heard that he is dealing with a significant injury and could miss significant time. Obviously, the Flyers haven't yet divulged the information on what exactly the injury is and how long he will be out. I assume there is a possibility he could come back in the playoffs if everything goes according to plan, and if they get lucky, and depending how far they go, of course. But the latest I've heard is that he was getting checked on Saturday, and that it was a significant injury that was probably going to keep him out for a while.
Okay. Well, we don't need any more injuries derailing development.
Of course. Yeah,
I mean,
that's for sure.
I think that's what derailed Morgan Frost. The timing of his shoulder injury and COVID and everything set him. It really was a disruptive element to his development, but it looks like he's gotten around the curve now. So best to Zamula as well. We'll have Emil Andrea coming on in just a minute. And there he is, as a matter of fact. He joins us now on Stick to Hockey Live. It's Jason Martinez, Anthony DeMarco from Montreal, and there he is, Emil Andrea. What's up, Emil?
What's up?
How you doing, bro?
Great. Just got out of practice, so I'm doing good.
Did you have a good shower after practice?
Yeah, I did a little hot tub, cold tub, and got a little bit loose, so that's good.
Nice. Nice to meet you. I'm Jason. That's Anthony DeMarco there in Montreal. Let me ask you first and foremost, coming over, you had a really good year over in Sweden this year, and you come over. What's that adjustment been like coming from the game over there and to the game over here, because you've hit the ground running really well here?
Yeah, of course. We had a pretty good year. I had a pretty good year in Sweden. As a team, we were struggling a little bit. We just got out of the relegation games too, and we got out of there. And since I came here, the boys have been taking care of me, and I think during these 5 games, I just getting better and better, and adjusting to the game pretty quick. And I feel like I played really well, and hopefully I can do any better.
Hey, Emil, nice to meet you, and congrats on coming over. Congrats on the new contract and everything. Just wanted to ask, and you kind of alluded to it there. Obviously, there is a bit of a difference between the European game and the North American game. Not a lot of games so far for you under your belt, but how have you felt the transition has gone to this point?
Of course, there's a bigger rink, of course, so that makes a huge difference. but I think the transition game is like the most area what I have to adapt to. Like there were boys like you in Sweden, you like a D-man in the gap control, you kind of like getting a lot of speed, gaining speed in the neutral zone coming back. But here you're kind of like a little bit flat-footed more, and the guys are like flying against you, and you have to be like really moving your feet and like gaining speed back. So I think that's the most. And obviously you have less time everywhere. Like the boards come pretty quick, and you have to make quicker decisions. And even the physicality is more physicality in this league than in Sweden. So I think that's the most the huge difference.
They get on top of you really quick because there's just less real estate out there. I should ask you this first. Let's make sure we're saying your name right. How do you say your name?
In an American accent, I would say Emil Andre.
Okay, so it's not Andrea, it's Andre.
Andre, yeah.
Andrea. Okay.
Andre.
Andre. Okay.
Yeah.
Look, it's your name. I don't want to screw it up. Like, that's important to get right, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to get that straight first. And you know, Joachim Grunberg is Flyer scout over there, and he was telling me, you know, you have really transformed your body a few years ago, lowered your body fat, added a lot of lean muscle. What was that process like, and how did you feel like it benefited you on the ice?
Well, of course, I'm getting stronger. And that year was the COVID year, and we had a long summer practice, I remember, and I was really focused and dialed to get my body in shape and like getting stronger, faster. But of course, like during a whole season, like in the beginning, your body's pretty like ripped, and you feel strong and you feel fast and light, and then during like a long season like this, the body gets like, of course it gets like you have your problems with your body. You feel some places they're like not injured, but like you feel a little bit like stiff and stuff, and
that's the wear and tear,
like,
right?
You're gaining weight during the season too. So, but I feel like my body's getting better, and the last 3 summers has been really good for me. So hopefully I can get a big summer practice too this year.
So last summer, you were obviously one of the standouts at the World Junior Hockey Championship, a tournament that was displaced about 8 months because when it got shut down over the holidays over a year ago because of COVID. But being able to play that tournament, have such a good tournament, and then jump right into your regular season over in Sweden, did that help you kind of transition that momentum over? And was it better almost setting yourself up going into the regular season with your club team?
I think so, yeah. Again, a lot of confidence coming back from that tournament. And obviously the season before, I played a lot in the Hockeyallsvenskan, and we won that champion. And for me, I felt that like, okay, I'm enough good to be like good on this level. And then we got to the World Juniors, and I had a really good tournament there too. So that was kind of like, I felt that, okay, I'm confident in myself, and I feel like I have all the keys to be good in pro hockey. So when we come back after the World Juniors, I gain a lot of confidence, and I feel like I brought that into the season there. So yeah.
Yeah, captaining that team as well. Emil, you know, you drafted in 2020, you're 54th overall in the second round. Do you feel like you're on your schedule? Kind of, you know, when you get drafted, you go, all right, I'm going to play in the NHL, and I'm going to be there next week. But that's not the reality of it. Do you feel like this is the right time for you to come over, get some experience in the AHL, and push for a roster spot with the big club next year?
Yeah, I think since I've been like drafted that year, I knew at that time I was not gonna like not be in the NHL for the next 2 or 3 years. I knew I was on a good path in developing, and I knew that if I just keep doing what I'm doing right now and just keep developing my game and improving every time, I think I knew that my chance is gonna be there. So during these 3 years, I've been developing my game, and hopefully I can just keep on improving every detail in my game. And I think there's a good chance and a good shot for me to to make a big step next year. Yeah.
You know, you started your tenure with the Phantoms alongside Belpedio, kind of on that de facto top pair, a role that has kind of been filled by two guys prior this season, Cam York now with the Flyers, Zamula, who just kind of went down with an injury. Has that helped you at all, being slid in right to a high-pressure situation with a big role? And what has a guy like Belpedio meant as a partner in the early stages?
Yeah, I think it helped me. Like in Sweden, there's a lot of pressure on you when you play in that league. Like if you're losing, there's a huge pressure on you because you don't want to get into the relegation games and stuff like that too. And last year too, we made a good run and we made playoffs and we won that league, and that was like when you get like that when you really feel like, okay, I'm a really winner, and I know I can do it. You like gain that confidence too. And when I came here, of course, there was a lot of expectations on me, and I knew that. And I just trying to get my mentality in that it was the same sport. I still gonna play hockey, but I think a guy like Louis really helped me too. Like he's talking to me on practices and on games, and like even every guy in this team, they've been really nice to me and taking care of me. And as soon as you get comfortable off ice, you being comfortable on the ice. So that's been really huge for me.
Yeah, I mean, we see you playing games. We see you in the situation at practice, but that's only a small part of your day. You come over in the middle of a season. It's not like you got a ton of time to transition to living in North America, get your living arrangements and all that. It's kind of, living out of a suitcase. So what's that off ice adjustment been like, living in North America now, coming over right after your season? How much have the guys like, your fellow Swedes like Ole Lycksell, Adam Yinning, and Sam Ersson been helpful in that process of getting adjusted to life in North America?
Yeah, of course, the Swede has been helping me a lot. Just talking to them and asking questions about the off ice things, like just some small details you want to know. You can just talk to them, and it feels like a little bit like you're home when you're talking Swedish to them, of course. And then I have a roommate on my hotel right now. I live with Nolan Meyer, so he's been kind of helping me too to get everything going. And he has a car, so we go for dinners and stuff, and we've been hanging out. And even on the golf course, these guys in this team play a lot of golf, and I've been golfing with those guys too. And of course, I've been getting comfortable off ice, and their Swedes really helped me, and even the other guys too. So that's
hold on,
nice.
You're taking their money on the golf course already?
Yeah, not yet. I have to rent clubs actually, so I haven't been that good actually.
Oh, no shit. So what's your handicap?
I have like 14 right now, I think.
All right, nice. Go ahead, Ant.
So like obviously this is a team that is going through a bit of a transition, right? Like new management group, kind of entering somewhat of a rebuild. And presumably there are going to be a lot of big time roster spots open over the next few years for players like yourself, a guy who was drafted a little over 2 years ago. For you, is that any added pressure in the way that you're going to approach the game? And is that something that you think you could thrive on more because you know that there's such a big opportunity on a team that's heading in a younger and rebuilding direction?
I think that's a benefit for me, and even for the younger prospects here. Of course, I haven't been following the Flyers that much during the years, but I know there's some improvements, and they've been changing the staffs and players in and out, and of course there's a kind of rebuild situation, and I think that would like benefit me and like to get my spot on the team. That's the only goal I have, and it would have been stupid to not have that goal. So I think that would help the younger prospects to trying to make the team, and you really feel like, okay, I probably have a shot on this, so I would do everything to make it my spot, of course.
Emil, final question for you. One of the names that we're always looking for comparables, right? And the name that gets mentioned for you when it comes to Flyers defenseman is Kimmo Timonen, the former Flyers defenseman, good Finnish guy. Played over there as well and kind of came through your neck of the woods kind of. on his way to the NHL. What do you know about Chemo? Have you talked to Chemo at all? And had to break bread with him yet?
No, I haven't talked to him, and I don't really know him as a player. I know he's a small defenseman and like pretty similar. Like my game is pretty similar to his, but I haven't really seen him play it or anything like that. So, no.
Yeah, he was a guy that maybe small in height, but that lower half of Chemo was like a brick shit house. I mean, quads like an NFL running back, just so strong on his feet and he could just stand in there in board battles. And he was a great guy and a really good defenseman for a long time that they grabbed from Nashville many years ago. Emil, I know you're a big golf guy, and I think the boys are doing a little something for the Masters. Who'd you get in your draft for Masters weekend?
Yeah, we did the draft before here, actually. Yeah.
Who'd you get to win the tournament to try and win the pot?
We were
Tiger?
No, it was Jon Rahm actually.
Oh, dude, good one.
So we were a group of the Swedes actually. So we had a couple picks, and I think we got a good team.
We got to get you down to Augusta and play 18 down there. A little amen corner for you.
Yeah.
That'd be sick, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, there's some good golfing over here. I don't know what the golfing's like over in Sweden, but you'll find some good golf around here in the Philadelphia area as well. Some really good tracks for you to get out on.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah, this has been awesome, man. You're a great talker. I love it, man.
Yeah, I'll try to.
Awesome. Well, hey, man, best of luck down the stretch here with the Phantoms. We'll definitely chat again soon. Everybody's rooting for you, and can't wait to see you up here with the Flyers. Thanks for doing this, and stay well, brother.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good time.
Good luck, man.
Emil Andrae, not Andrea. You got to get the name right. You got to get that part equation down. Very good talker, man. I'm impressed with the way he handled everything, and good on him, man. I'm really excited for him.
Yeah, very candid too. Very like not the typical like responses of, oh, pucks in deep, that whole thing. Like very candid about what he thinks this opportunity is, the pressure and how he can thrive on it, bringing that over from Sweden, how he was able to carry the momentum and his play from the World Juniors right into the regular season with his club team. I think that this is a guy that's maybe going to be, maybe not a diamond in the rough. Like I think everyone knew that his pedigree when he was drafted 2.5 years ago. But that 2020 draft, man, is looking really, really good right now. You have Forster, you have Andre, you have Desnoyers. Like those are three players that could be a significant, well, maybe not significant, but big, like important. Decently, important guys for this group moving forward. And they're all still relatively young, right? Like they're all like 22 years old, just to jump into the guys who are already on the team who are in that age range here. So, I mean, obviously you want someone who maybe can emerge above the rest as like that high end talent. I think of the three we just mentioned, Andre has the biggest chance to get to that role. But I mean, look, if you're telling me that you have Andre and York as your top two left shot D for the foreseeable future, to say nothing of what you have in Provorov and Sanheim, who obviously are more expendable now based on what we've seen from York, and if Andre's development could stay linear, I think you're in decent shape here. And the only thing that you really got to hope for is at some point you get one that emerges as that stud number one. And to be honest, Andre, maybe isn't a lock to be that role, but probably has an outside chance because of the way he plays the game and thinks the game.
Yeah, and then you couple that with, Ronnie Adder, the right shot guy. I don't think he's ever a top pair guy at the NHL level. He may be a third pair guy and a power play, with that big shot, maybe PP2, something like that. And real good kid as well, and kind of like a coach on the bench from what I'm told. So, yeah. I mean, the reason why those players are important is because they're homegrown. They're drafted, developed, and you're getting, a real contribution from the guys you got through the draft. And that's a big thing. Look at the really good teams. They're built on their draft, and they're supplemented with free agents or trades, but they're built through the draft. The depth of their roster is usually always through the draft. Yeah. That's a big time important thing.
And the other thing that they really have to make sure here, because you had homegrown guys, right? Similar to Andre and Cam York as young left shot D, and Provorov and Sanheim and Shane Gostisbehere. And I think that even including Andre and Cam York, Provorov had the biggest pedigree coming out of the 2015 draft. Like a lot of people thought, myself included, he'd be contending for a Norris maybe one day. But I think the biggest thing that they have to make sure they don't repeat as they did with Sanheim and Provorov, and to be fair, that was more under the Ron Hextall era, is that you need to make sure that you don't sandbag these guys with no partners to bring them along. You need to put them in a win-win situation, and a situation where they're not looking to be the anchor of the defense in their early 20s. You know, I'll always say this, but Ivan Provorov playing alongside Andrew McDonald for the first 2-3 seasons of his career in the NHL did him no favors. Sanheim coming up and playing with the likes of who was that guy they brought in, Christian Folin or Radko Gudas on a second pair, Robert Hagg. Like, these are guys that probably shouldn't have been playing, especially on their offside as left shot guys, with younger defensemen who had such high pedigrees. And I think that specifically in the case of Ivan Provorov, irreparable damage was done to his game for trying to overcompensate for partners that shouldn't have been put in that role. So that's why I do kind of think that maybe keeping around a Ristolainen, who has been your most steady guy on that right side, if we're not counting Cam York, maybe wasn't the worst idea in the history of what Chuck Fletcher did or whatever. So, I mean, yes, they have the talent here, but they have to make sure that they don't repeat history in terms of that development that we saw with Sanheim and Provorov.
Yeah, and I think that's where Torts, and Danny Briere come in a big way. Don't block guys, but you have to have guys around here that teach these guys how to be pros and how to and put them in a position to excel and develop further at the NHL level. And I'm talking to Lappy too. I know that Danny wants just about everybody to spend time with Lappy before getting to the NHL. Now, if you get lucky and you get the number 1 overall pick and you draft Connor Bedard, he's probably not going to be Lappy.
Yeah, no, exactly. But that's the thing, right? Like, it's not a one size fits all development path, right? Like, you have to be conscious of what kind of player you're dealing with. And maybe Andre's a guy that, by Christmas time in 2023, he's ready to come up. And it's not the same development path for everybody. Like, look at a guy like Igor Zamula, who's taken a bit longer to find his game than a guy like Cam York, although they were still relatively same age, relatively same role that could be filled. But you just
probably went back for 1 year to the Brandon Wheat Kings and then came up and has played ever since.
Exactly.
But even when he first came up, people were saying he's ready, don't send him back. And sending him back was the right thing to do. Same thing with connecting. Went back to the
100%. And then you look at a guy maybe like Shane Gostisbehere, who was drafted in 2012, I believe, and he only made the jump to the NHL in the 15-16 season, and he spent, I believe, 3 months down with Lehigh. You look at Travis Sanheim, who was drafted a year before Provorov, and he only made the jump to the NHL on a full-time basis towards the end of the 17-18 season.
Yeah.
So it really isn't a one-size-fits-all system, and you kind of have to look at what players' games can translate more. Maybe Andre has a more of an advantage over some guys because he's played pro hockey with men over in Sweden and kind of grinded it out more, as opposed to, let's say, a guy like Cam York, who came in over from the NCAA and had to get used to that schedule, had to get used to playing against pros and all that. So yes, you want to do the best for development, and no player has ever suffered from too much seasoning in the AHL. But at the same time, you have to be conscious of what player that you're dealing with. And maybe one guy's better suited to, fast track his way to the NHL than others that came from, let's say, a junior and NCAA background.
No doubt about it. And well said. All podcast, it was well said by you. Mediocrely said by me. Let's wrap it up there. That's episode 60 of Stick to Hockey Live. We thank Emile Andre for joining us on this episode. Great to talk to him. We'll be back next week as we'll be entering the final week of the season, if you can believe it. Flyers in Dallas tomorrow. Then on Saturday, they're in New York to take on the Isles. Then Sunday, this next 3 games is brutal. Dallas, top spot in the Central. You got the Islanders, wild card number 1. And then you've got the best team in the NHL by a landslide with over an .800 winning percentage in the Boston Bruins. Then you got Columbus and Chicago to wrap it up with 2 teams that aren't so good. So we'll see how it plays out. 5 to go for the Flyers. Is it 5? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 5 games left. I can't believe this season's. I'm miserable already. Ant, great job. Follow Ant on Twitter at ADeMarco25. Read his stuff at thefourthperiod.com. And check all that out there as well. If you're not following them, you better follow them. And you better leave us a 5-star rating and review as well. That'll help other Flyer fans and hockey fans find this content. So thanks everybody for listening. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you next time on a brand new episode of Stick to Hockey Live. Have a great